this week's edition of Get Booked. I'm Mary.
I'm Jennifer.
And what are we going to talk about today, Jen?
Road trip books.
Why are we talking about road trip books?
It's the end of summer. It's perfect time to go on one last road trip.
I could go for a road trip right now.
Where would you go?
Well, I wouldn't go to the south, that's for sure. I'm from Georgia. That's a red zone right now because it's full of corona. So, I think I would probably go up to like Vermont or Maine. Do a little camping. Get some cider donuts.
That sounds great.
Local cheese.
Yum. You're making me hungry.
I know, I think I'm hungry too. Alright, so what's your first book, Jen?
Alright, I've got a big stack as usual. My first book is an adult romance called 3 Little Words by Jenny Holiday. It is part of a trilogy where all these friends are getting married. So Gia is actually a bridesmaid and she's in New York, but she has to travel down south. Just not like what we want to do. She has 6 days to make it to Florida, and she somehow gets herself stuck in a road trip with the best man. And of course things go terrible and good and romancy and...
Would you say sparks fly?
Maybe. Anyways, the whole trilogy is really fun.
Okay, my turn?
It is your turn.
Okay, different tone of voice. This is a middle grade book called Someday Birds by... why is this? By Sally J. Plath. P-L-A. Anyway, this is a really good, it's her debut. I read this last year. I really enjoyed it. This is taken from the perspective of, is it Colby? Charlie, excuse me. Charlie. Colby's a different book I have. So Charlie is clearly on the spectrum. And he likes things to be a certain way. He likes to eat specific foods. Like, his shoelaces have to be tied just right. Like, and he's okay. As long as these things are done, he feels like he has some control over things. And what happens when you don't have control, and control is, like, very important, right? So his dad all of a sudden has to get this operation. In their family, it's just dad, it's grandma, and his siblings. And so the dad is, like, flown across the country for, like, this whole special, I want to say it's, like, surgery or cancer, it's been a year. And then the grandma goes with him. And so the kids are left on their own, and of course that goes horribly, because of course the girlfriend has a boyfriend who she invites over, and she's not supposed to invite over because teenagers. And so they end up, a family friend, who the kids don't really know that well, comes over, and she gets an RV and just drives him across country, because she, like, tries to look after him in the house, and she realizes, like, no, these kids really want to be with their dad. It's not really fair to them to not be with their dad. And so part of it is the mystery of discovering more about this new person in their life. But then Charlie is like, what is this road trip? Like, no, like, this is not going to happen. Oh wait, no, the road trip happens because the older sister, who's the teen, and the boyfriend decide, yeah, we'll just put all the kids in the car. We'll just drive across the country to dad. And so the family friend catches up with them and has an RV. And so it's just like, you know what, you guys are so hell bent on this. We're just going to do this. And there's a whole question about whether dad will actually be there at the end. Will he still be alive? So it's, like, heartbreaking, but at the same time you're like, oh no, what's going to happen? And so Charlie decides that he can't control anything that's going around him. And that is very, very hard for him. And he's trying his best in a bad situation. But he decides that he and his dad are birders, and so they have a list of someday birds. And so he makes a deal with everybody in the car, or the RV, that along the way, can we stop and try and look for some of my someday birds with dad? So that way, when I see dad again, I can say, I found our someday birds. Which is, like, so good. And of course, something goes wrong, and he strikes out on his own and scares everybody half to death. But it's such a good read. So it's not quite the road trip that everybody was expecting, much less Charlie, but everybody learns a lot in the end.
Nice. My next one is Wanderlust by Jen Malone. This is a road trip that takes place in Europe.
Ooh.
Yes. So
do they have to drive on the opposite side of the road, or is that just the UK?
Well, it's on a bus tour.
Okay.
So she's not even driving. But she is leading the bus tour because her sister took the fall for her, I think. And her sister can't go on the trip, and now she has to go in her sister's place. And she has to lead this group of senior citizens around Europe. And of course they all have something else that they want to do that's not on the tour, and...
Is it like herding senior cats?
Yes. And the tour company's son is there, his name is Sam, and he's around Aubrey's age, and there may or may not be a love story, across Europe, so that's fun.
Okay. So my next book is Going Bovine by Libba Bray, and I can't even describe this book, so I'm just going to read the publisher description because it's so bonkers. It's so very good. All 16-year-old Cameron wants is to get through high school and life in general with a minimum of effort. It's not a lot to ask, but that's before he is given some bad news. He's sick and he's going to die, which totally sucks. Hope arrives in the winged form of Dulcie, a loopy punk angel, possible hallucination with a bad sugar habit. She tells Cam there's a cure if he's willing to go in search of it. So with the help of Gonzo, a death-obsessed video gaming dwarf, and a yard gnome who just might be the Viking god Baldar, Cam sets off on the mother of all road trips through a twisted America of smoothie-drinking happiness cults, parallel universe-hopping physicists, mythic New Orleans jazz musicians, whacked-out television game show hosts, snow globe vigilantes, and disenfranchised fame-hungry teens into the heart of what matters most. Yeah, I can't, that's basically, yeah, without giving too much away, this book is great. So if you're looking for like a quirky YA road trip book that you're just like, what is even going to happen around the next turn, please read this book. It is so very good. I think this was a Nutmeg nominee, if not a Nutmeg winner at one point, too. I want to say. I could be wrong. It was like 10 years ago.
Seems like it's a possibility.
Alright, what do you got?
My next one is Open Road Summer by Emery Lord. It's a friendship book. So one of the friends is a country superstar. I think Taylor Swift in her early days. And her best friend just broke up with her boyfriend, and her country superstar singer friend is about to go on tour, a 24-city tour, and Reagan's like, hey, I'll just accompany you and it'll be fine.
What could go wrong?
Of course, and there's, you know, so there's music, there's the road trip, there's maybe another romance on the horizon, one never knows.
Well then. So my next book is one of John Green's road trip books. He has two. This is the one that was on the shelf. This is called An Abundance of Katherines. So Colin Singleton is like a child prodigy, and he has had 19 girlfriends named Catherine, and Catherine has all been spelled the exact same way. And he's convinced that like he can create a formula that can track the end of like the relationship. So he and his best friend go on a road trip, and they end up in this town, and all this weird stuff happens, and he falls for another girl who's not named Catherine, but he's like, I don't know, I have my whole theorem of Catherine's, this will probably end, like, I have like 4 days, and we'll probably break up. So there's like, it's a John Green book, so there's like weird quirky stuff that happens, so it's like a good like YA book that has some weirdness in it, because I always feel like John Green has some weirdness, aside from the sad book that's just sad.
Alright, my next one is an old favorite, Amy and Roger's Epic Detour by Morgan Matson.
I need to read that.
I love it. So good. So, Amy and her mom are moving across the country. Amy leaves after her mom, and so she's responsible for getting to California, to Connecticut. But her father died in a car accident, and she's not really interested in driving that long way. But there's an old family friend named Roger who's like, hey, sure, I'll drive. That sounds great. So Amy kind of has it all planned out, where they're going to stop, where they're going to do. Everything is set. And of course Roger comes along. He's like, no, we should go do this, and we should go see this, and the biggest ball of yarn is over here, and of course we have to see that. So he completely derails the trip, and she's just like, why? But, you know, they're stuck in a car, so they talk, and they form an attachment, and you know where that's going.
I do.
You should.
Okay. So my next book is called The Disenchantments. This is the opposite of a romance book, I guess you would say. It's by LaCour. He's one of my favorite YA authors. And this one's a little bit different from her other ones that have been kind of more issue-oriented. So Colby has a long-standing pact with his best friend Bev that once they just graduated from high school and they're gonna do this tour with Bev's band, the Disenchantments. He's the roadie for the band, and then after the tour is over, they're gonna go to Europe and take a gap year and just hitchhike and backpack all over Europe. And then Bev's like, yeah, I don't really want to do that anymore. And she tells them right when they're in the start of the road trip. And so, like, there's a point where, like, they pull off the road and he has to, like, go pout in a field for a little bit because he's just like, all of my hopes and dreams have just shattered. And also, like, maybe he has a lot of feelings towards Bev that Bev doesn't really share with him. Like, he's just Colby, her best dude friend that she loves, but at the same time, not in the way that Colby wants her to love him. But the show still has to go on. They still have all these tour dates, and they're like this little, like, all-girl punk band, and whether or not they're good or not is debated, which is kind of funny, because they're like, why? If we were boys, you wouldn't care. Like, so they show up, they play, like, a lot of house parties and stuff, and so it's this great road trip of, like, Colby trying to kind of, like, mend his heart, but also figure out, like, what he really wants out of life. If he doesn't want Bev, like, what does his life look like? Or you can't have Bev, and how do you reconcile that? So if you're a John Green reader, I feel like this is also kind of like a John Green book. It's very similar to, like, An Abundance of Katherines or Paper Towns in the theme of, like, not putting all your hopes and dreams on, like, one girl who cannot possibly fulfill all the things in your mind. She is not your manic pixie dream girl. So yeah, but I also just really enjoyed it because there's a lot of, like, 90s Riot Girl punk references too, because LaCour clearly was a Riot Girl or a fan of Riot Girl when she was my age. So yeah, this is my first one. I also like the cover too. So they're on tour.
My next one is a Kristin Higgins book. Kristin is a Canadian author. She's really sweet. I've met her a couple times at the local bookstore where she signs art at Julia's. So Kristin wrote a book where this divorce attorney is going to her sister's wedding. Her sister has a destination wedding, and her ex-husband is there. And through somehow, she and her ex-husband are stuck in a road trip getting back home together. She's very unhappy about it, obviously, and, you know, there's a lot of issues there, but they have a lot of time together in the car where they can maybe talk about some of the things that went wrong.
What? There's time to
So
talk
they
about
do.
things in a car trip? What? Yeah, so my next comic is, I'm a huge X-Men fan, I know I have talked about that in the past. So this is a little bit of a different X-Men comic. They're still mutants, don't worry about that. The world still hates them. So there was a time recently where the original X-Men team was pulled out of time from the 60s because Beast wanted to shame current Cyclops for a decision he made. And so he's like, what if I have, like, current, like, I don't know how old Scott Summers technically is now. They always change it. But, like, 40-year-old Cyclops look at 16-year-old Cyclops and be like, look what you have become. Like, look how far you've gone off path. So he does that, but then the 1960s teen X-Men get stuck in, like, our time. And they're just like, a lot of things happen. There are some decisions that we don't talk about, but, like, it's a really weird. So they basically have the whole, like, Captain America, man out of time. These are teens out of time. And they're like, wait, what are cell phones? Like, you know, Bobby Drake comes out as Iceman because Jean accidentally reads his mind, he's like, you're gay, and that's a different topic and a different comic, but I'm kind of trying to set the scene. So all of this horrible stuff has happened to them, so Scott, Bobby, who's Iceman, Teen Beast, and who is it? Angel as well as all new Wolverine, which is Wolverine's clone, who's a teen girl, Laura, and also Kid Apocalypse and Heidi. They were like, let's just go on a road trip because, like, everything at the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters is horrible and our life sucks. And, like, Scott's also trying to get away from Jean because he's just like, I've had enough. And then, of course, Iceman's like, yes, let's get away from Jean. That would be great. So they go on this road trip and they just are trying to outrun their problems, but they're X-Men. So wherever you try and run, problems just catch up to you. They actually end up finding the Blob, who's just trying to eat dinner. And they just automatically assume, like, the Blob's a bad guy! And Blob can be a bad guy, but right now he's just sitting in a restaurant eating a steak dinner, minding his own business. He actually hasn't been doing villain things for a little bit. But, like, these are teens. They're like, no, we fought you like 6 months ago, our time, and it's like, no, you didn't, buddy. And so they wreck his dinner, and he gets mad because he paid for that. So it's a good teen down road trip book. So fun. Yeah, it's a weird one, but it's fun.
My next one is a Debbie Macomber book. A mother, a daughter, and an ex-mother-in-law are all going on the road trip to the ex-mother-in-law's 50th high school.
That's a lot of
high school reunion.
That's a lot of family baggage in one car.
It is, and they're all kind of good friends though. So, but the men in their life aren't always great, and so they might meet some new people, and that might ruffle some feathers. And a lot of Debbie Macomber's books have similar characters pop up. I think they originally are from the town that the Blossom Street town is in, so you kind of see some of the familiar characters popping through all the other books, which I always find fun.
That's cool. I didn't realize her books were a shared world.
Some of them are.
Okay. Cool. So my last book is All-Star Batman. This is a Batman comic that came out a couple years ago. I think I like the first volume best out of the whole series. It's the one I remember the most. So, long story short, Two-Face is kind of the villain, kind of the victim in this comic. So, if you know any of the Batman lore, Two-Face was originally, attorney Harvey Dent, and he gets acid thrown on his face, and so it causes him to have a split personality. So, sometimes he's Two-Face, who's like this, really maniacal villain that's always out to get Batman, but then sometimes Harvey Dent can come back and take over. And of course the whole thing with Two-Face is he has a coin, and one side is scarred, and he flips it, and if it comes up scarred side, he's going to kill you. So that's the whole thing. So in this comic, Two-Face has designed this really intense, set up this whole entire hit that basically is a bounty for a rogues gallery of Batman villains. And if they can kill Batman, they get this huge pot of money, and also the fame of killing Batman, right? But Batman has figured out, because Bruce Wayne was childhood friends with Harvey Dent, that something happened to Harvey, and that Harvey's actually trying to tell him something, and has seeded coded messages to him, and he's trying to figure it out. So he basically kidnaps Two-Face, and they are on a road trip across country to get to this one destination where Bruce thinks that he can unlock something and bring his childhood friend back. Meanwhile, there's all these villains that are trying to kill him. And also in Gotham, there's a ring of crime lords that are like, wait, if Two-Face is out of the way and Batman dies, we get Gotham. So they're also seeding the pot money to get more people to go after to kill Batman. So it's really good, because all Batman has is himself, Two-Face, who is not reliable whatsoever, his new sidekick, is it Duke? I believe it's Duke, and Alfred. But a lot of times he's having to go dark, so he has no comms. So it's just a really good, explosive, literally, road trip. What's your last book?
Nice. I have two that are very similar. It's Find Momo Across Europe and Find Momo Coast to Coast. So Momo is this really cute dog, and Momo and his owner go across the country, and Momo, I think that the owner's name is Andrew, and he tells Momo to go hide. And so he takes pictures like this nice flower field, and Momo is hidden somewhere in here. Or they're at the Eiffel Tower, and Momo is hidden there. Or coast to coast, so this one is obviously our country, and Momo is hidden. Oh, I saw him. He's right there.
Momo books are the best.
They're really fun. Oh, there he is there. They're really fun. And Andrew Knapp is also on Instagram with Momo, and Momo has a new friend, which I forget Momo's friend's name, but he has another dog.
He's super cute, I'll tell you that.
They are.
And it was also, cute watching the whole, Momo get introduced to him, because Momo did not like him at first.
No Momo.
But now they're, best buds?
Yeah, it's like siblings. Sometimes you don't always like them. My sister wanted to return me, so, yep. That's how it goes.
Okay, but where would you get returned to? Just the hospital?
I think so.
Okay, that is the whole thing. Alright, well, we hope you enjoyed our road trip edition of Get Booked. These books are all available for checkout at our library, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.